CEO believed his mother's lies about his wife and twins. 18 years later, one video revealed the heartbreaking truth. Part 2. The woman standing in Dylan Walker's living room had his eyes. Dark, intense, unmistakable. But everything else about her was a stranger. She stood there, trembling with barely controlled rage, holding a folder of documents like a weapon. "I'm your daughter," she said. Her voice was steady, surgical. "Your first daughter, the one you never knew existed." Dylan stared at her, his face draining of color. "I don't understand." "Of course you don't." The woman laughed, bitter and broken. "Let me clarify. My name is Sophie Torres. I'm 32 years old. My mother was Elena Torres. Perhaps you remember her. That summer when you were 17? The girl who taught you what love felt like." The name hit Dylan like a physical blow. Elena. God, Elena. She pulled photographs from the folder, throwing them onto the coffee table. A young woman with dark hair and Dylan's same eyes, visibly pregnant. Bank statements showing a $3 million transfer from Karen Walker. Legal documents with signatures and dates that told a story Dylan never knew existed. "Your mother paid mine to disappear," Sophie said, her voice cracking. "Told her that if she really loved you, she'd let you have the future you deserved. And my mother, she was 16 and terrified, so she took the money and vanished. She spent the next 32 years raising me alone, watching you on television, in magazines, building hotels, and attending galas while we lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, wondering what our lives could have been." Dylan's twin sons, Aiden and Adrian, stood frozen. Their mother, Diane, sat perfectly still, watching this new daughter reveal herself like a grenade with the pin already pulled. "And now," Sophie continued, tears streaming down her face, "now you're dying. 6 months left," the news said. "So, I came here to tell you that you stole everything from me. Every birthday, every graduation, every moment I needed a father. You weren't there, and now you want to die and take my only chance at having one with you." The room held its breath. This is where our story begins. Not at the beginning, but at the moment when the past finally catches up. When secrets that were buried for 3 decades claw their way to the surface. When a dying man discovers that his mother's lies didn't just destroy one family, they destroyed 2. Have you ever discovered a secret so devastating it rewrote your entire past? Have you ever had to face the consequences of someone else's cruelty decades after they're gone? What would you do if you found out your parent had another child, a whole other life that they never told you about? Before we dive deep into this story, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button right now and turn on all notifications, because part 2 is going to take you on an emotional journey you will not want to miss. This isn't just a story. This is a lesson about forgiveness, about the price of lies, about families that break and the ones that choose to rebuild. Drop a comment right now and tell me where you're watching from. Or just say, "I'm with you, Mr. Hearthline," because you're going to need to be fully present for this journey. Let me take you back to where this chapter really starts. 5 years after the viral video that exposed Dylan Walker's betrayal. 5 years after his twin sons stood on a stage and told the world that their billionaire father had abandoned their pregnant mother based on lies. 5 years of careful, painful reconciliation. But some wounds, no matter how much time passes, never fully close. They just wait for the right moment to reopen. It started beautifully, deceptively so, like the calm before a hurricane that you mistake for peace. It was Thanksgiving morning at Haven, the flagship restaurant of Diane Morris's culinary empire. The kitchen was already warm, filled with the scent of herbs and butter and pie crust. Diane stood at the marble island, her hands dusted with flour, rolling dough, with the same meticulous precision she applied to everything in her life. The back door opened quietly. Dylan Walker stepped inside, carrying a bottle of wine and the careful hope of a man who knew he was always one wrong word away from losing everything again. "You're early," Diane said without looking up. Traffic was lighter than I expected. He set the wine on the counter, Sauternes, her favorite from when they were young and foolish, and believed that love could conquer the cruelty of the world. Diane's hands stilled on the dough. She looked at the bottle, and something flickered across her face. Surprise, perhaps, or the ghost of a happiness she'd buried years ago. "You remembered," she said softly. "I never forgot anything about you, Diane." The words hung between them like smoke, beautiful and suffocating. She returned to her dough, but her movements had changed. Self-conscious now, aware of him in a way she didn't want to be. "There's coffee. You know where the cups are." He did, not because she'd told him, but because this kitchen, though renovated and expanded, held the same logic as the tiny apartment kitchen where they'd first cooked together 23 years ago. Sugar to the left of the stove, cups above the coffee maker, cinnamon in the small drawer, not the spice rack. Dylan poured 2 cups, preparing hers without asking. Dark roast, splash of cream, 1/4 teaspoon of brown sugar. He set it beside her workspace. Diane stared at the cup. "That's exactly how I take it. I know. Dylan." She looked at him fully now, and the air between them changed, thickened. For just a moment, 23 years collapsed into nothing. For just a moment, they were standing in that tiny apartment again, before Karen's lies, before the accusations, before everything broke. The front door burst open. "Maman, we're here." Lucia swept in first, tall and graceful, followed by her twin brother Aidan. Behind them came Laurent Duchamp, the master craftsman Diane had been seeing for the past year. He was kind-faced and competent, with hands scarred from decades of woodworking. He kissed Diane's cheek, called her chérie, and Dylan felt something ancient and painful twist in his chest. He was an intruder in a life that had learned to thrive without him. Over the following weeks, the pattern repeated. Family dinners where Dylan would arrive early and help set the table, knowing instinctively where the silverware belonged, which glasses to use, how Diane liked the napkins folded. Impromptu visits to Haven, where he'd bring coffee for the staff and linger to discuss. Menu changes with Diane, their conversations stretching longer than necessary. They fell into old rhythms without meaning to, finishing each other's sentences about food and flavor profiles, standing too close while reviewing renovation plans for Haven's newest location, hands brushing when reaching for the same spice jar. One evening, standing alone in Haven's walk-in herb garden behind the restaurant, Diane touched his arm. "You still tap your pen 3 times before you write." Dylan looked down at the pen in his hand, surprised. "I didn't realize I still did that." "Some things don't change." She pulled her hand back, but not quickly, not like she wanted to. "Diane, don't." She shook her head. "Please don't say whatever you're about to say." "Why not?" "Because I've built a good life, Dylan. A peaceful life. And you being here, looking at me like that, it's not fair. I'm not trying to be unfair. I know. But you are anyway." The twins noticed. Of course they did. They'd grown up watching their mother rebuild herself from ashes. They knew every expression on her face, every shift in her voice, and they saw the way she changed when Dylan was around. Softer, younger, like a part of her that had been locked away was trying to remember how to breathe. Laurent noticed too. It came to a head on a Tuesday evening. Diane had just gotten home from a long day at the restaurant. Laurent was waiting with 2 glasses of wine. He handed her one and sat across from her at the kitchen table. "You still love him," Laurent said. No accusation in his voice, just truth, spoken gently. Diane's hand froze on her glass. "Laurent, that's not fair. I'm not angry. I'm not even surprised." His voice was steady, kind, devastating in its honesty. "But I deserve someone who's fully present. And Diane, part of you is still standing in that apartment 23 years ago, watching him throw you out. That's not true, isn't it? You light up differently when he's around. You laugh at his terrible jokes. You know how he takes his coffee, even though you haven't lived with him in over 2 decades. He paused. "I've never seen you look at me the way you look at him." Diane's eyes filled with tears. "I've moved on. I have." "Have you?" Laurent reached across the table, taking her hand. "Because I love you enough to tell you the truth. You've built a beautiful life, but you've never fully let him go. And I can't compete with a ghost." "You're not competing with anyone. Then look me in the eye and tell me you don't still feel something for him." Diane opened her mouth, closed it. The silence was answer enough. Laurent nodded slowly, sadly. "I thought so. They sat in that silence for a long time. Finally, Laurent spoke again. "I'm not leaving, not yet, but Diane, you need to figure out what you want. Because I deserve all of you, not just the parts that aren't still tangled up in him." He kissed her forehead and left. Diane sat alone in her kitchen, crying for reasons she couldn't fully name. 3 days later, Dylan called her. His voice was calm, too calm, in the way that meant he was barely holding himself together. "I need to step back," he said. Diane stood on her porch, phone pressed to her ear, watching rain fall on the garden. "Dylan, what are you talking about?" "From you. Not from the boys, but from you. From showing up at your house. From the way I look at you when I think no one's watching." He paused. "Laurent's a good man. He makes you happy. I won't be the reason that falls apart. You're not destroying anything. We both know that's not true." His voice cracked. "I destroyed you once, Diane. I won't do it again. I'll see the boys at their place. You won't have to worry about me confusing things anymore." "Dylan, wait." But he'd already hung up. Diane stood in the rain for over an hour, crying for the man she'd once loved, for the life they'd almost had, for the impossible situation of still feeling something for someone who'd broken her so completely. Dylan kept his word. For the next 3 weeks, he saw the twins at their apartments, at restaurants, anywhere but Diane's home or haven. The almost moments stopped. The lingering looks ended. The careful distance returned. Diane noticed his absence more than she expected. Laurent noticed her noticing. But they tried. They really did try to move forward. Then everything changed. It was a Wednesday morning. Dylan was in the Walker Hotel's boardroom, presenting quarterly earnings to the board of directors. Mid-sentence, talking about expansion into the Pacific Northwest, he stopped. His hand went to his chest. His vision tunneled. He started, then stopped. "I need a moment. Mr. Walker, are you all right?" someone asked. Dylan tried to respond. His mouth moved, but no words came out. The room tilted. The floor rushed up to meet him. He collapsed. Chaos erupted. Someone called 911. Someone else loosened his tie. The ambulance arrived within minutes, sirens screaming through Manhattan traffic. EMTs loaded him onto a stretcher. The executive team stood in the boardroom, watching their CEO disappear. Into the elevator, knowing that something fundamental had just shifted. At the hospital, they ran tests. MRI, CT scan, blood work. Dylan lay in the sterile room, staring at the ceiling, feeling his body betray him in ways he couldn't yet understand. The doctor came in 6 hours later, young, competent, with the kind face of someone who delivered terrible news too many times. He sat down, which was never a good sign. "Mr. Walker, I'm not going to sugarcoat this. We found a mass in your pancreas. The biopsy confirmed it's cancerous. Stage 4. It's already metastasized to your liver." Dylan heard the words from a great distance. "What does that mean?" "It means we caught it late. Very late." The doctor's voice was gentle but firm. "With aggressive treatment, chemotherapy, radiation, we might be able to extend your time. But we're talking months, not years. 6 to 8 months, possibly less." 6 months. Dylan repeated the words, trying to make them real. "I have 6 months. I'm very sorry." After the doctor left, Dylan sat alone in the hospital room. His phone buzzed with messages from the board, from his assistant, from business associates. He ignored them all. Instead, he stared out the window at the Manhattan skyline, watching the sun set over the city he'd spent his entire life conquering, and thought about all the time he'd wasted, all the years he'd spent building hotels instead of relationships, all the moments he'd missed with his sons because he'd believed his mother's lies. He thought about Diane, about the way she'd looked at him in that kitchen, like maybe, just maybe, there was still something worth saving. And now he had 6 months to figure out what legacy he'd leave behind. 6 months to try to fix 18 years of mistakes. He called his assistant. "I need you to draft a press release. I'm stepping down as CEO effective immediately." "Sir, are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." "Say it's for health reasons." Don't give details. And schedule a meeting with my sons for tomorrow evening. At my house. Of course, sir. Anything else? Dylan looked at his reflection in the darkened window. A man in his 50s, successful and wealthy, and utterly alone. No, that's all. The press release went out the next morning. Dylan Walker, CEO of Walker Hotels, stepping down effective immediately due to health reasons. The board wishes him privacy during this difficult time. The media exploded. Speculation ran rampant. His phone wouldn't stop ringing. But within hours, someone leaked the truth. Terminal cancer. 6 months. Dylan Walker is dying. The headline was everywhere. Social media erupted. Think pieces about his legacy. Old interviews resurfaced. And through it all, Dylan sat in his penthouse, watching the world react to his mortality, feeling strangely detached from all of it. His phone rang. Aiden. Dad, is it true? Yes. Oh God. Aiden's voice broke. Why didn't you tell us? I just found out yesterday. I'm telling you now. Can you and your brother come to the house tonight? There's something I need to say to both of you. Person. Of course. Of course. We'll be there. Should we bring Mom? If she's willing. Dylan hung up and stood at the window, looking out at the city that had been his kingdom, knowing that in 6 months, maybe less, it would all go on without him. The hotels would still stand. The board would choose a new CEO. Life would continue. But his children would remember. They would carry his mistakes, his choices, his legacy. And he had 6 months to make sure that legacy was something other than abandonment and lies. Evening came. Dylan's housekeeper answered the door. Aiden and Adrian arrived together, their faces tight with worry. Diane came too, which surprised him. She hung back, letting the boys lead, but her presence was a gift he didn't deserve. They gathered in his study. The room was lined with architectural models of hotels he'd built, cities he'd shaped, monuments to ambition and success that suddenly felt hollow. Dylan didn't waste time. I have a brain tumor. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. It's terminal. 6 to 8 months, possibly less. Adrian's hand flew to his mouth. Aiden's face went white. Diane closed her eyes, pain flickering across her features. I'm sorry, Dylan continued, his voice steady despite the earthquake happening inside him. I wanted to tell you in person before you heard it somewhere else. I'm stepping down from the company. I'm going to spend whatever time I have left trying to be present, trying to be better. He looked at his sons, trying to be the father I should have been from the beginning. Lucia started crying. Aiden pulled him close. Diane sat perfectly still, her hands folded in her lap, processing. Dylan was about to say more when the doorbell rang. Everyone froze. He wasn't expecting anyone else. His housekeeper's voice came over the intercom. Mr. Walker, there's a woman here to see you. She says it's urgent. Tell her I'm with family. Sir, she says her name is Sophie Torres. She says she's your daughter. The room went silent. Not the silence of peace, but the silence before an explosion. Dylan's heart stopped. His sons looked at each other confused. Diane's eyes snapped open. What? Aiden said slowly. Is she talking about? I don't know. Dylan stood, his legs unsteady. I don't know anyone named Sophie Torres. Shall I send her away, sir? No. Dylan's voice was barely a whisper. No. Send her in. The moments before Sophie walked in felt like hours. Dylan's mind raced. A daughter? Impossible. He'd only ever been with 2 women. Elena, that summer when he was 17, before she disappeared without explanation. Diane, there was no one else. But Elena. God, what if Elena had been pregnant? What if his mother had done to her what she'd done to Diane? The door opened. A woman in her early 30s walked in. She was elegant, put together. But there was something raw beneath the surface. Something barely controlled. She had dark hair pulled back, sharp cheekbones, and when she looked at Dylan, he saw his own eyes staring back at him. Hello, Father, she said. Her voice was calm, surgical, each word precisely chosen. Dylan stared at her, his world tilting. I'm sorry, I don't understand. Of course you don't. You never knew I existed." Sophie's smile was bitter. "Let me clarify. My name is Sophie Torres. I'm 32 years old. My mother was Elena Torres. Perhaps you remember her? The summer you turned 17? The girl from the quarter who taught you about poetry and showed you what love felt like." The name hit Dylan like a bullet. Elena, that name, that summer, those memories he'd locked away for decades because the pain of her leaving had nearly destroyed him. Elena, who'd sent him a letter saying she'd found someone else. Elena, who'd vanished from his life like smoke. "Your mother," Dylan whispered. "Where is she?" "Dead." Sophie's voice cracked on the word. 4 years ago. Cancer. She died in a county hospital with me holding her hand, saying your name." "No." Dylan shook his head. "No. Elena left me. She said she didn't love me anymore. She said that because your mother paid her $3 million to say it." Sophie pulled a folder from her bag, throwing it onto Dylan's desk. Papers scattered across the mahogany surface. Birth certificates, photographs, bank statements. Aiden picked up one of the photos. A young woman, barely more than a girl, visibly pregnant, standing in front of a small apartment building. She had Sophie's features. And Dylan's eyes. "That's my mother," Sophie said. 6 months pregnant with me. Your mother, Karen Walker, found out and showed up at our apartment with a briefcase full of cash and a lawyer." Dylan sank into his chair. His sons stood frozen. Diane rose slowly, moving closer to see the documents. Sophie continued, her voice shaking but determined. "Your mother told mine that if she truly loved you, she'd disappear, that a Beaumont heir couldn't have his future destroyed by a seamstress's daughter. She offered $3 million and a non-disclosure agreement. My mother was 16 years old and terrified, so she signed." She pulled out more documents. Contract. Karen Walker's signature. Bank transfer records showing $3 million moving from a Walker account to Elena Torres. "My mother took that money because she thought she was protecting you," Sophie said, tears streaming now. "She thought she was doing the right thing. She used it to disappear, changed her name, moved across the country, had me alone in a hospital in Portland. And she spent the next 32 years raising me on what was left of that money, watching you on television, in magazines, building your empire, while we lived in a 2-bedroom apartment wondering what our lives could have been." Adrian stepped forward. "How do we know any of this is true?" Sophie pulled out another document. "DNA results. I had them run using a sample from your last hospital visit. We share 50% of our genetic markers. I'm his daughter, whether he knew about me or not." She looked at the twins. "I'm your sister. Your older sister. I existed before either of you. I was the first child he lost to Karen Walker's lies." The room spun. Dylan couldn't breathe. Elena had been pregnant. They'd had a child together, a daughter, and his mother had paid Elena to disappear, just like she'd fabricated evidence to make him think Diane had cheated. The pattern was clear now, devastating in its completeness. Karen Walker had systematically destroyed every relationship Dylan had, every chance at happiness, every family he might have built. And now, decades later, the consequences were walking through his door with his eyes and 32 years of justified rage. "Why now?" Diane asked quietly. "Why show up now, after all these years?" Sophie turned to her. "Because I saw the news. That he's dying. 6 months left. And I thought," she laughed, broken and bitter, "I thought he should know, before he dies, that he had a daughter who spent her entire life watching him from the outside, who went to father-daughter dances alone, who graduated high school and college with an empty seat where he should have been, who watched him marry you," she gestured at Diane, "have children with you, build a life, while my mother worked herself to death just to keep us fed." Her composure shattered completely. "And now you get to die. You get to just leave, after stealing every moment I should have had with a father. Every birthday, every graduation, every heartbreak when I needed someone to tell me I was worth loving. You weren't there for any of it. And now you want to die and take my only chance at having a father with you." "Sophie," Dylan stood, reaching toward her. "Don't." She stepped back. "Don't you dare try to comfort me. You don't get to do that. You don't get to be the father now when it's convenient. When you're dying and feeling guilty." "I didn't know." Dylan's voice broke. "Sophie, I swear to God, I didn't know." "Everyone says that." Her voice was raw. "You didn't know about her." She pointed at Diane. "You didn't know about them." She gestured to the twins. "But somehow, you had billions for investigators and lawyers, and you never once looked for my mother. Never once questioned why she'd leave when you claim you loved her so much." "I tried to find her." Dylan pulled open a drawer in his desk, hands shaking. "I have the letters. Every letter I sent came back. Returned to sender. Every phone call went unanswered. I thought she'd moved on." Sophie pulled out more documents, returned letters, all with Karen Walker's handwriting on them. "Refused. Returned to sender. Your mother intercepted everything. She made sure nothing got through. She controlled your entire life, and you let her. Because I was 17. Dylan's voice rose. "I was a kid. I didn't know how to fight her. And I was 0. Sophie's scream filled the room. "I was a baby. What's my excuse? What's my mother's excuse? She was 16 and terrified, and your mother convinced her that disappearing was love." The room fell into terrible silence. Aiden and Adrian stood together, processing that they had a sister, that their grandmother's cruelty had extended even further than they'd known. Diane watched Sophie with recognition in her eyes. She knew that pain. She'd lived it. Finally, Diane spoke. "Where are you staying?" Sophie turned to her, surprised. "A hotel." "Why?" "Stay with me." Diane's voice was firm. "I have a guest room." Everyone stared at her. "Why would you do that?" Sophie asked, suspicion and hope warring in her voice. "Because I know what Karen Walker did to me. The lies she fabricated, the evidence she manufactured, the years she stole." Diane's eyes were fierce. "If she did it to me, she did it to your mother. And someone should have helped her. Let me help you." Sophie's walls cracked. "You don't even know me." "No. But I know what it's like to be destroyed by that woman's lies. And I know what it's like to raise children alone while their father built empires." She stepped closer to Sophie. "You don't have to trust me. You don't have to forgive him. But you don't have to be alone either." Sophie stood there, trembling. 32 years of pain and anger and longing colliding inside her. She looked at Dylan, at the man who was supposed to be her father, seeing him clearly for the first time. Not a villain. Not hero. Just a man. Broken and manipulated and running out of time. "I can't forgive you," Sophie whispered. "Not yet. Maybe not ever." "I know," Dylan said. "But I—" She looked at Aiden and Adrian. "I'd like to know them. My brothers. If they want that." Aiden stepped forward without hesitation. "We want that." Adrian nodded. "You're our sister. We're not losing any more family." Sophie's face crumpled. She nodded once, sharp and quick, then turned to Diane. "Okay, I'll stay with you. For now." Diane touched her arm gently. "That's all I'm asking." Sophie walked toward the door, then paused. She looked back at Dylan. "My mother's last words were about you," she said. "Tell him I never stopped loving him. Tell him I'm sorry. Tell him Elena never forgot that summer." Dylan broke. Completely, utterly broke. He sank into his chair and sobbed like a man who'd just discovered that every choice he'd ever made was based on lies. Sophie left. Diane followed after a moment, guiding this new, broken daughter out into the night. Aiden and Adrienne stood with their father, watching him fall apart, not knowing how to fix something this shattered. Outside, Sophie sat in Diane's car and cried. Cried for her mother. Cried for the father she'd never known. Cried for 32 years of absence, and the 6 months that was all she'd ever get. And in that moment, the fragile peace that Dylan had built over 5 years with his twin sons cracked wide open. Because some wounds are too deep to heal. Some lies destroy more than one generation. Some mothers damage their children in ways that echo for decades. Karen Walker was 4 years dead, but her poison was still spreading, still destroying, still stealing. And now, Dylan had 6 months to try to clean up a mess that had been building for over 3 decades. 6 months to be a father to a daughter who hated him. 6 months to keep his sons from being torn apart by rage and resentment. 6 months to figure out if redemption was even possible when you were dying. The clock was ticking, and time, Dylan was learning, was the one thing money couldn't buy. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of Sophie living in Diane's guest room, barely speaking, barely eating, moving through the space like a ghost, haunting a life she was never supposed to be part of. 2 weeks of Aiden and Adrian trying to bridge the gap between their dying father and the sister they'd just discovered. 2 weeks of Dylan's health visibly declining, his body betraying him in small, terrible ways. And then the board of Walker Hotels called an emergency meeting. Dylan was too weak to attend in person, so they held it via video conference. His face appeared on the screen in the boardroom, gaunt and pale, but his eyes were still sharp. The board members sat around the long table, their expressions carefully neutral. Richard Castellano, the chairman, a man in his 60s with silver hair and the predatory instincts of someone who'd spent 40 years in corporate warfare, cleared his throat. Dylan, we need to discuss succession planning. With your condition and your resignation as CEO, the company needs stability. We need a plan for the future. I understand, Dylan said. What are you proposing? Richard glanced at the other board members, then continued. We're proposing a merger. Walker Hotels and Haven Restaurants. Combined, we'd have an $8 billion hospitality empire. Your children, all 3 of them, would inherit equal shares. It would secure their futures and give the company the leadership transition it needs. Dylan was silent for a long moment. You want to merge my company with Diane's. It makes strategic sense. Haven has brand recognition, culinary excellence, and a reputation for innovation. Walker Hotels has global infrastructure and capital. Together, they'd be unstoppable. Have you discussed this with Diane? We thought it best to present it to the family first. Richard's smile was smooth. After all, your children are stakeholders in both companies' futures. The meeting adjourned. Dylan sat alone in his study, staring at the blank screen, feeling the weight of what they were really asking. They wanted to fold Diane's empire, the thing she'd built from nothing while raising his children alone, into the Walker legacy. They wanted to put his name on her success. He called Aiden. We need to talk. You, your brother, and Sophie. Tomorrow. My place. The next evening, all 3 of Dylan's children sat in his study. Sophie perched on the edge of a chair, still wary, still angry. Aiden and Adrian sat together on the couch, united as they'd always been. Dylan explained the board's proposal. A merger, equal shares for each of them, $8 billion between them. Aiden leaned forward, his business mind already working. Think about what we could do with those resources. We could fund culinary schools for underprivileged kids, create job training programs, build affordable housing, actually use that money to help people instead of just building more luxury hotels. Adrian's face tightened. That's Mom's company. She built Haven from nothing. We can't just absorb it into the Walker empire. I'm not saying absorb it. I'm saying expand it. Give her resources she never had access to. She never wanted those resources. She wanted independence from this family. From him. Adrian gestured toward Dylan. Maybe that was necessary then, but things are different now. We could redefine what the Walker name means. The Walker name tried to destroy her. Why would we want to carry it forward? Because it's our name too. Aiden's voice rose. Whether we like it or not, we're Walker's children. And maybe instead of running from that, we could transform it into something that actually matters. Sophie had been silent, watching the brothers argue. Now she spoke, her voice quiet but sharp. You're both very lucky to have something worth fighting over. They turned to her. She continued. You're arguing about billions of dollars and legacies, and whether to honor your mother or your father. I'd trade all of it just to have had him at one birthday party. Just one. The room went quiet. Sophie stood. A man approached me last week. Richard Castellano. She looked at Dylan. He's on your board. Dylan nodded slowly. What did he want? He said that you two, she gestured at the twins, have had 5 years to build relationships with Dad. That when the will is read, you'll have influence and I'll have nothing unless I align myself with power. He said if I support the merger, I'd have a voice, a seat at the table. And what did you say? Aiden asked carefully. I'm thinking about it. Adrian stood. You've been here 2 weeks and you're already choosing money over family? Sophie's face flushed. Don't you dare judge me. You grew up with a mother who loved you, who built an empire for you, who gave you everything. I grew up with a mother who worked herself to death just to keep us fed, while your father lived in penthouses. So yes, maybe I want some of what you've always had. Maybe I'm tired of being the one who got nothing. We didn't get everything. Adrian's voice was hard. We got a mother who cried herself to sleep for years. We got questions we couldn't answer about why our father didn't want us. We built what we have. With Mom, while he was living his life without us. He's dying. Aiden stood between them. Can we please, for once, not make this about the past? He's got months left, maybe weeks. Can we just figure this out without tearing each other apart? Figure what out? Adrian shot back. Whether to let the board manipulate us into a merger that benefits them more than us? Whether to let Dad's legacy contaminate everything Mom built? It's not about Dad's legacy. It's about ours. What we build. What we do with what we've been given. Aiden turned to his brother. When did you become so stuck in the past that you can't see the future? When did you become so desperate to prove you're worthy of the Walker? Name that you're willing to destroy everything that actually matters. The words hit Aiden like a slap. He stepped back. Is that what you think I'm doing? Isn't it? You want the merger because it makes you feel legitimate. Like you're not just the abandoned kid who got lucky. Like you're a real Walker heir. And you're blocking it because you're terrified of letting go of your anger. Because being the wronged son is easier than being the man who chooses to move forward. Boys, Dylan's voice was weak but firm. Stop, but they couldn't stop. Years of unspoken resentment, of questions about their father, of watching their mother struggle while he lived in luxury. All of it came pouring out. They'd never fought like this, never been on opposite sides of anything. They were twins. They were supposed to be unbreakable, but Sophie's arrival, the merger proposal, Dylan's impending death, it was all too much weight for even the strongest bond to bear. Adrian grabbed his jacket. I need to leave. He walked out. The door slammed. Aiden stood there, staring at where his brother had been, looking lost. Sophie sat down slowly. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cause this. You didn't, Dylan said quietly. I did. This is all my fault. Later that night, Aiden couldn't sleep. He sat at his computer, going through emails, trying to distract himself from the fight with his brother. That's when he found it. An email chain he shouldn't have had access to, but someone on the board had accidentally copied him on a reply. He read through the messages, his blood running cold. Richard Castellano to the board. The daughter is the key. She's desperate to belong. Cultivate that. Make her think supporting the merger gives her legitimacy. Another board member's response. And the twins? Richard's reply. They're already fracturing. Push the wedge deeper. Once the merger is complete, we execute the buyout. Offer them enough money to walk away. They're young, they'll take it. Then we control the whole empire. $8 billion under our management. The Walker and Morris families get their payout and we get the company. Aiden sat back, his hands shaking. They were all pawns. Sophie, him, Adrian, all of them. The board didn't want a merger to honor their parents' legacies. They wanted it so they could stage a hostile takeover and buy out the children once the companies were combined. Sophie was being manipulated, and so was he. He grabbed his phone and called Sophie. We need to talk. Now. An hour later, they sat in a 24-hour diner in Midtown. Aiden showed her the emails on his laptop. Sophie read through them, her face going from confused to shocked to devastated. They were using me, she whispered. They were using both of us. Aiden closed the laptop. Richard made you think supporting the merger would give you power. He made me think it would let us do good in the world. But really, they just wanted us divided so they could take everything. Sophie put her head in her hands. I'm such an idiot. No. You're hurt, And they weaponized that. Aiden reached across the table. Sophie, you said you're tired of having nothing while we had everything. But you're wrong. You have something we didn't have for 18 years. What? You have a choice. We didn't get to choose whether to know our father. It just happened. But you get to decide, right now, whether to let these people use your pain against us, or whether to choose family. Sophie looked up at him, tears streaming. I don't know how to be part of a family. I never had one, neither did we. Not really. Dad wasn't there. But we figured it out. Me and Adrian and Mom. And you can too, if you want. Sophie wiped her eyes. What do I have to do? Help me fix this. Help me make things right with my brother. And then help us figure out what we actually want. Not what the board wants, not what Dad wants, but what the three of us want. Together. For the first time since she'd walked into Dylan's study 2 weeks ago, Sophie smiled. A small, fragile thing, but real. Okay, I'm in. If this story is hitting you right in the chest, if you're feeling every ounce of Sophie's pain and the brothers' conflict, I need you to do something for me right now. Hit that like button and drop a comment. Tell me, do you think Sophie has a right to be this angry? Do you think the twins should forgive their father? Do you think Aiden or Adrian is right about the merger? I want to hear your thoughts, because this story is about to get even more intense. Keep watching. The next morning, Aiden went to Adrian's apartment. His brother opened the door, still angry, still hurt. I'm sorry, Aiden said. Adrian blinked, surprised. What? You were right. About me wanting to prove I'm worthy of the Walker name. About me being desperate to be legitimate. You were right about all of it. Adrian stepped aside, letting him in. They sat on the couch where they'd spent countless nights as kids, talking about their absent father, trying to make sense of their fractured family. Aiden pulled out his laptop and showed Adrian the emails. His brother read through them, his expression darkening. They were playing us. All of us. Aiden closed the laptop. I wanted the merger because I thought it would make me matter. Make me more than just the abandoned kid who got lucky. And I almost let them destroy us because of it. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. I wanted to block it because I was terrified of letting go, of being angry at Dad, of admitting that maybe he's not the only villain in this story, that maybe Karen was, and he was just another victim. We've both been stuck, Aiden said. You in the past, me in trying to escape it. What do? We do what we should have done from the beginning. We talk to Mom. We talk to Sophie. We figure out what we actually want. Not what the board wants, not what Dad wants, but us. Together. Adrian smiled, tired but genuine. When did you get so wise? When I almost lost my brother over money and pride. Kinda puts things in perspective. They embraced, the fight between them dissolving like it had never been. Because they were twins, they were unbreakable, even when the world tried to break them. 3 days later, Dylan's health took a sharp turn. He collapsed at home. The ambulance rushed him to the hospital. The doctors were blunt. Days, maybe a week. His body was shutting down. There was nothing more they could do except manage his pain. They moved him to a hospice facility, a private suite overlooking the Hudson River. Peaceful, beautiful. The family insisted. No sterile hospital rooms for his final days. Dylan lay in the bed, drifting in and out of consciousness. Morphine kept the pain at bay, but stole his lucidity. He had moments of clarity, brief windows where he was fully present, and moments where he didn't know where or when he was. His lawyer came, a kind woman in her 50s who'd handled the Walker family affairs for years. She set up her laptop at the small desk in the corner and read the will Dylan had finalized 3 days earlier. Dylan's children sat in chairs around the bed, Sophie on one side, Aiden and Adrian on the other. Diane stood by the window, present but separate, as she'd always been in Dylan's life. There, but not belonging. The lawyer read, I, Dylan Walker, being of sound mind, divide my estate as follows. 25% to Aiden Morris, 25% to Adrian Morris, 25% to Sophie Torres, 25% to the Elena Torres Foundation, to be established to support foster youth and single mothers. Sophie's breath caught. A foundation in her mother's name. The lawyer continued. Walker Hotels is to be dissolved. All assets liquidated. The proceeds divided as stated above. Haven Restaurants remains fully independent under Diane Morris's sole control. Diane closed her eyes, relief washing over her face. However, the lawyer looked up. Should my children all unanimously agree, and should Diane Morris consent, they may merge the liquidated Walker assets with Haven to create something new, but only if it's unanimous among all three children. Only if Diane consents, and only if it's built on love and vision, not obligation or greed. Dylan stirred in the bed, his eyes opened, barely focused, but present. The Walker name, he whispered, his voice like dry leaves, dies with me. Whatever you build, make it yours. Not mine, not your mother's, yours. Aiden leaned forward. Dad, you should rest. No. Dylan's hand reached out, trembling. Need to say this, while I can. He looked at Sophie. I'm sorry I wasn't there, but they will be. Your brothers. Let them. Sophie took his hand. It was the first time she'd touched him willingly. I will. Dylan turned his gaze to the twins. You're better men than I ever was. Not because of me. In spite of me. Thank you for letting me see it. Dad. Adrian's voice broke. And Diane. Dylan's eyes found her by the window. Tell her I'm sorry. For everything. You can tell her yourself, Aiden said. She's right here, but Dylan's eyes had already closed. The morphine pulled him under again. The moment of clarity was gone. The lawyer packed up her things and left quietly. The children sat in silence, processing what they'd just heard. A fourth of Dylan's fortune to each of them. A foundation in Elena's name. The choice to merge or not, but only if they all agreed. 2 days later, they met in Diane's living room. Just the four of them, the three siblings and their mother. No lawyers, no board members, no outside voices. Adrienne spoke first. I never thought I'd want anything to do with Walker money. But what if we used it the way it should have been used from the beginning? Aiden nodded. Culinary schools, job training programs, community development, housing for at-risk youth. Sophie's voice was quiet. My mother would have loved that. She always said education was the only way out. They all looked at Diane. This is your inheritance, Diane said carefully. Your choice. But if you do this, we do it right. No shortcuts, no compromises. We build something that honors all your parents. Elena, me, even Dylan. What do we call it? Aiden asked. Not Walker, Sophie said firmly. That name has done enough damage. Not Haven either, Adrian added. That's Mom's. We need our own. Morris and Company, Diane said softly. You're all Morris, whether by birth or choice. That's the name that matters. The siblings looked at each other. A silent conversation passed between them. Then, one by one, they nodded. Unanimous. Dylan's decline accelerated. The hospice nurses prepared the family. Hours now, maybe a day. His breathing was shallow, labored. His body was giving up. Sophie went to him first. Late afternoon, golden light streaming through the windows. She sat beside his bed, watching him struggle for each breath. She'd been so angry for so long. 32 years of rage and resentment and grief. But sitting there, watching this man die, she felt it all draining away. What was the point of anger when the person you were angry at was already disappearing? Dylan's eyes opened, barely focused, but he saw her. Sophie, he whispered. I'm here. She leaned closer. You look just like her. Your mother. You have her eyes. People say I have yours. Hers were kinder. Dylan's smile was faint. I loved her. Need you to know. Wasn't just summer. Was everything. She loved you too. Until the very end. She never stopped. I would have fought for you. If I'd known, would have fought for you both. Sophie felt something crack inside her chest. I know. I'm starting to understand that. I'm sorry. Can't give you back those years. Sophie took his hand. First time she'd initiated touch. I forgive you. The words came out before she could stop them. I don't want to. I wanted to hate you forever, but I can't. Because hating you only hurt me. Dylan's face crumpled. Tears ran down into his temples. Thank you. Sophie leaned down, kissed his forehead. Goodbye, Dad. First and last time she called him that. Dylan's eyes closed, a small, peaceful smile on his lips. Evening came. Aiden and Adrian went in together. They sat on either side of the bed, each taking one of their father's hands. Dylan was weaker now, each breath a visible struggle. Hey, Dad, Aiden said softly. We're here. Dylan's eyes fluttered open. My boys. We made a decision about the merger. We're doing it. Together? Dylan's voice was barely audible. Together, all three of us. Adrian squeezed his hand. Sophie, me, and Aiden. Good. That's good. We're calling it Morris and Company. Not Walker. Not Haven. Something new. Something ours. Aiden's voice was thick with emotion. Mom's helping us build it. Dylan's eyes closed in relief. So proud of you. Both of you. Better than I ever was. You gave us a chance to know you, Adrian said. That's more than we thought we'd have. Thank you for coming back, Aiden added. Even if it was late. Thank you. Tell your mother. Dylan's words were slurring now. Tell her I'm sorry for everything. Tell her she was the best thing, even if I didn't deserve her. We will, Adrian promised. The twins sat with him for hours, holding his hands, letting him know he wasn't alone. Eventually, exhaustion pulled them away. They kissed his forehead and left, knowing it might be the last time they saw him conscious. At 2 a.m, Diane's phone rang. The hospice nurse. He's asking for you. He doesn't have much time. Diane drove through empty streets. Laurent had offered to come. She'd said no. This was something she needed to do alone. One last thing she owed the man who'd given her children, even if he'd given her nothing else. She entered the hospice room. Dylan was awake, but barely. The oxygen mask covered his face. Each breath was a battle he was losing. He saw her and reached for the mask with trembling hands, trying to remove it. Don't, Diane said, moving to his side. You need that. Need to say this. Clearly. He pulled the mask aside. His voice was a rasp. Do you remember our wedding vows? Diane sat in the chair beside his bed. Every word. I broke every single one. Dylan, let me finish. He paused, gathering strength. Promised to honor you, protect you, trust you. Failed completely. Diane took his hand. It was cold, fragile, nothing like the strong hands that had once held her. But you, Dylan continued, you kept yours, loved those boys unconditionally, built something beautiful, became everything I should have been. Stop. You're being too hard on yourself. No. Being honest. For first time in 18 years. He reached beneath his pillow with shaking hands and pulled out something small. A dried wildflower, pressed and preserved, fragile as tissue paper. From the night we met. You wore them in your hair. Diane took the flower, her hands trembling. You kept this? All these years? Always. Because that night, met the woman who could have saved me. If I'd been strong enough to let her. Silence filled the room. Just the sound of his labored breathing and the quiet hum of medical equipment. Can I tell you something? Diane asked. Dylan nodded. I used to imagine what it would be like if you came back, if you knocked on my door and said it was all a mistake. I played that fantasy 1,000 times. And I realized I didn't need you to come back to be whole. I became whole on my own, and that's the greatest gift you accidentally gave me. Dylan's smile was sad. Accidentally, but I'm glad you got to meet them, our sons. I'm glad you saw what we created together. They're magnificent. They are. Diane paused. And Dylan, I'm happy now. Really happy. Laurent asked me to marry him last week. I said yes. Good. Dylan's voice was fading. You deserve that. Deserve everything. His breathing became more labored. Outside the window, Rain began to fall. Soft at first, then harder, like the night they'd met at that charity gala 23 years ago. Like the summer Dylan had fallen in love with Elena. The rain that seemed to mark every significant moment in his life. Diane, I'm scared. Of what? Being forgotten. Life, meaning nothing. Diane leaned closer, her voice gentle. You won't be forgotten. 3 people exist because of you, and they're going to do extraordinary things. That's your legacy. Thank you. For them, for everything. Rest now. It's okay to let go. Will you stay? I'm not going anywhere. Dylan's eyes closed. His breathing slowed. The rain fell harder. Diane held his hand and began to hum. Softly, the same song she used to hum when she cooked. A Billie Holiday tune about love and loss and the bittersweet nature of memory. Dylan's eyes fluttered open, one last time. Elena, he whispered. Diane didn't correct him, just kept humming. Kept my promise, Dylan breathed. Remembered, one final shuddering breath. Then, stillness. The rain drummed against the windows. The machines beeped once, twice, then went silent. Dylan Walker, age 54, billionaire, father, destroyer of lives and builder of empires, was gone. Diane sat in the silence, tears streaming down her face. She placed the wildflower on his chest, leaned down, kissed his forehead. Goodbye, Dylan Walker. I loved you once, and that will always matter. She stood, walked to the window. The rain fell in sheets now, cleansing, releasing. She took a deep breath and walked out. Into the hallway, into the rest of her life. A life that would continue without him, as it always had, as it always should have. She called the children from the parking lot, rain soaking through her coat. He's gone, peacefully. He wasn't alone. Aiden's voice broke on the other end. We're on our way. An hour later, all 3 of Dylan's children stood around his body. Still now, peaceful, finally free from the weight of his mistakes. They didn't speak for a long time, just stood there, processing the strange grief of losing a father they barely knew. Sophie broke first, sobbing into her hands. All the anger, all the resentment, dissolving into pure sadness for what could have been and never was. Aiden put his arm around her. Adrian placed his hand on Dylan's chest. We're okay, Dad, Aiden said quietly. You can rest now. We've got each other, Adrian added. Sophie looked at Dylan's face through her tears. And we've got you. Finally, even if it's just this. Diane stood in the doorway, watching her children mourn. They were together, united, and somehow that was enough. If you're crying right now, you're not alone. This story is about more than one man's mistakes. It's about forgiveness, about family, about the legacies we leave behind. Take a moment and hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Comment below and tell me, have you ever had to forgive someone who hurt you deeply? I read every single comment. Let's keep going, because the ending is going to leave you breathless. The media found out within hours. Billionaire Dylan Walker dead at 54. The headline spread across every news outlet. Cameras descended on the hospital. Reporters called the family constantly. Social media exploded with think pieces about his legacy, his scandal, his redemption, or lack thereof. But the family stayed silent. Diane handled everything with grace. She released one statement. Dylan Walker was a complicated man who made devastating mistakes and spent his final years trying to correct them. He is survived by 3 children who will honor his memory by building something better than what he left behind. We ask for privacy as we grieve, short, dignified, giving nothing to the vultures circling for details. The funeral was 1 week later, a private ceremony, small, intimate. The location was significant. The lake upstate where Dylan had spent that summer with Elena, the place where he'd first understood what love felt like. Full circle. The attendees were few. Sophie, Aiden, Adrian, Diane, Laurent, supporting Deanne quietly from a respectful distance. A handful of close friends, no business associates, no board members, no spectacle. just family, however they defined that word. The casket was simple, elegant, no ostentation. White wildflowers covered it, the same kind Dylan had kept pressed in a book for over 30 years, the same kind that had marked every love he'd ever had and lost. Adrienne spoke first, standing at the edge of the lake, the water calm and mirror-like behind him. Our father wasn't perfect. He made choices that hurt people we love. But in his final years, he tried. He showed up. He listened. And he gave us something we never thought we'd have. Each other. He paused, looking at his siblings. We didn't get a lifetime with him, but we got enough, and for that, we're grateful. Sophie went next, her voice stronger than it had been a week ago. I spent 32 years hating a man I'd never met, and then I met him and realized he was just as broken as the rest of us. She looked at the casket. My mother loved him, and in his way, he loved her too. That has to count for something. She took a breath. I forgive you, Dad. Finally, completely. Rest easy. Aiden spoke last. Dad once told me he was proud of us. Not because of him, but in spite of him. I think he was wrong. He looked at Diane. We're strong because of Mom. We're fighters because we had to be. But we learned forgiveness because of him. We learned it's never too late to try. He turned back to the casket. Thank you, Dad, for trying, for showing us that even broken people can choose to be better. Diane didn't speak publicly, but after the service, after most people had left, she stood alone by the casket. The lake lapped gently at the shore. Birds called in the trees. The world continued, indifferent to one man's death. You asked me once if I thought we could have made it, she said quietly. If none of this had happened, she traced the edge of the casket. I've thought about that a lot, and I think, maybe, in another life, if we'd both been braver, but this is the life we got, and I don't regret it anymore, because it gave me them. Thank you for our sons. Thank you for trying at the end, and thank you for letting me go. She placed a single wildflower on the casket, turned, walked back to where her children waited, where Laurent waited, where her life, her real life, continued. The casket was lowered into the ground beside the lake. The headstone was simple, gray granite, elegant lettering, Dylan Walker, 1970 to 2024. He tried. 3 words. Not great man, not beloved father, not successful businessman. Just, he tried. Because in the end, that was all that could be honestly said. He'd tried. And sometimes, trying isn't enough. But it's something. The rain began again. Gentle. Cleansing. The siblings stood together, arms around each other. Sophie in the middle, flanked by her brothers. Diane stood slightly apart, present but separate. As the first shovel of earth fell onto the casket, Sophie whispered, "He's with her now." With my mom. Aiden looked at her. You think so? Sophie smiled through her tears. I hope so. They deserved that summer to last forever. 6 months later, Morris & Company officially launched. The gala was held in Portland, at Haven's original location, the restaurant Diane had built from nothing. The space had been transformed, elegant but warm, filled with people who'd been helped by the new company's initiatives. Culinary students on scholarship, youth from job training programs, single mothers who'd received housing assistance from the Elena Torres Foundation. The company's mission was clear. Use the combined resources of Walker Hotel's liquidated assets and Haven's infrastructure to create opportunity, culinary education, job training, community development, sustainable hospitality that actually served communities instead of just extracting profit from them. Sophie ran the Elena Torres Foundation. She'd found her calling in helping kids who'd grown up like she had. Foster youth, children of single mothers, kids who needed someone to believe they were worth investing in. Aiden managed operations for Morris & Company. His business acumen combined with his genuine desire to help people made him the perfect bridge between profit and purpose. Adrian led culinary innovation, creating programs that trained young chefs while preserving culinary traditions and supporting local food systems. And Diane, Diane was chief creative officer, still the heart and soul of everything, still the woman who'd proven that you could build an empire from ashes and do it with integrity. At the gala, a reporter approached Sophie. "Do you wish your father had been here to see this?" Sophie paused. Thoughtful, genuine. "He is here, in every choice we make to do better than he did. That's the legacy that matters." The camera panned away. The gala continued. Music and laughter and the sound of people building something good from the wreckage of something broken. Outside, the Portland rain fell softly. Always the rain. Marking moments, washing things clean. 1 year after Dylan's death, Diane drove upstate to the lake. Early morning, the sunrise painted the water gold and pink. She walked to the grave alone. Comfortable clothes, jeans, and a sweater. Her hair loose, no makeup, just herself. Finally, fully herself. She knelt, placed fresh wildflowers on the headstone, white and purple and yellow. A whole bouquet this time, not just one. "The kids are thriving," she said softly. "You'd be so proud." Sophie's engaged to a teacher she met through the foundation. Aiden's talking about running for city council. Adrian just won another James Beard Award. "I wanted you to know. I'm happy, really happy. Laurent and I got married last month. Small ceremony. Just us and the kids, and close friends. Nothing fancy, but it was perfect." She traced the inscription on the headstone. "He tried. You asked me if I thought we could have made it. I finally have my answer." She paused. "No, we couldn't have. Because I needed to break to become who I am, and you needed to lose me to understand what love actually means. But I don't regret loving you. I don't regret our sons. I don't regret any of it. So thank you. For the good parts. The hard parts. For giving me a story worth surviving." She stood, looked out at the lake. The sun was fully up now. Golden, beautiful. A new day, a new beginning. A new chapter that didn't include him except as memory, as lesson, as the catalyst that had forced her to become extraordinary. "Rest well, Dylan Walker. Your story is over." She smiled. "Mine is just beginning." She walked back to her car, strong, whole. The camera lingered on the grave, then pulled back, wider, showing the lake. The sunrise, the wildflowers swaying in the morning breeze, the world continuing. Life persisting, beauty emerging from pain. Soft piano music played, not sad, not happy, just peaceful. Acceptance, resolution. The understanding that some stories don't have neat endings, they just have the grace of letting go. Fade to black. Text appeared on screen, white letters against darkness. Dylan Walker left behind $4.2 billion, 3 children, and countless regrets. His children took that inheritance and built Morris & Company, a global hospitality and social enterprise that provides culinary education, job training, and housing support for at-risk youth and families. To date, they've helped over 50,000 young people build better futures. Sophie Torres Walker runs the Elena Foundation, named after her mother, supporting single mothers and foster children. Aiden and Adrian Morris continue to expand their mother's vision across the world. Diane Morris Beaumont married Laurent in 2025. She remains Chief Creative Officer of Morris & Company and mentors young chefs and entrepreneurs globally. Dylan Walker's grave is visited regularly by his children, who gave him what he never gave them: presence, forgiveness, peace. Some mistakes can't be fixed, but they can be learned from, and that, perhaps, is redemption enough. The screen faded to black again. Then, one final message appeared. If this story moved you, if it made you think about your own life, your own family, your own capacity for forgiveness, I need you to understand something. This isn't just entertainment. This is truth wrapped in story. These are the lessons we all need to learn before it's too late. Dylan Walker spent 18 years living with a lie. His children spent 18 years living without a father. And in the end, they got 5 years together. 5 years out of a lifetime. Was it enough? No, but it was something, and something is infinitely better than nothing. So let me ask you, who in your life are you holding on to anger toward? Who have you not forgiven? What relationship are you letting pride destroy? What time are you wasting that you can never get back? Because here's the truth that this story teaches. Time is the one thing money can't buy. Forgiveness is the one gift that frees the giver more than the receiver. And family, real family, is built through choice and presence and showing up, even when it's hard. If you've watched this entire story, all the way to this moment, then you're part of something. You're part of the Mr. Hearthline community. People who believe that stories have power, that narratives can change us, that we can learn from other people's mistakes so we don't have to make all of them ourselves. So here's what I need you to do. Subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that notification bell, because I'm going to keep bringing you stories like this. Stories that break your heart and put it back together. Stories that make you think and feel and maybe, just maybe, choose differently in your own life. Hit that like button if this story affected you, and share it. Share it with someone who needs to hear about forgiveness, about second chances, about the cost of pride and the freedom of letting go. And comment below. Tell me where you're watching from. Tell me your story. Tell me who you need to forgive, or what lesson you're taking from Dylan's life. Or just say, I'm with you, Mr. Hearthline, because we're building something here. A community of people who believe in the power of story to transform lives. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for letting me share this story with you. Dylan Walker's story is over, but yours isn't. You still have time to make different choices, to build different legacies, to be present for the people who matter. Don't wait until you have 6 months left to start trying. Start now. Today, this moment. I'm Mr. Hearthline, and I'll see you in the next story. Until then, remember, some mistakes can't be fixed, but they can be learned from, and that might just be enough.